Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. This is a very special treat. I'm Joe Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Bradshaw Performing Arts Center. And as they say at some of the board meetings I attend, I think we have a quorum, so we can begin. It's not easy to come out into an indoor theater space during these times, so I do appreciate so much that you're here. We are also live streaming this through YouTube, so hopefully people at home get a chance to see this. We've got a special treat. We've got the Pinecrest High School Junior ROTC that's with us tonight. So if everyone will do me the honor and them the honor of standing as they present the colors.
You know, I never know whether to applaud or not when the colors are presented. It's like in church when you have a particularly good soloist. You just want to make sure that the effort is acknowledged. And these fine young, they look like they're Air Force cadets from Pinecrest, have done us a great honor and a great service by being here tonight. Thank you very much, folks. My name is John Dempsey, and I'm president of Sand Hills Community College, and I'm delighted to welcome you here for what I think will be a really nice presentation. It's a presentation, of course, about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and it occurs during a sort of a 2-week period when we're getting all excited and getting ready for Veterans Day. We've got the Marine Corps birthday coming up on the 10th of November. And we've got the parade, the big parade on Saturday. And then, of course, we have Veterans Day itself this year, which I believe, Andy, is a day off. Is that not correct? so we get a day off, and that's kind of nice. But I'm so glad that you are here. I know we have veterans with us. Veterans, raise your hands. Oh my gosh. Army, raise your hands. Air Force, raise your hands. Navy, raise your hands. No other Navy people? No wonder I'm sort of thirsty. How about Marines? Raise your hand. Oh, yes. When I said the Marine Corps birthday is on the 10th, I thought he was going to whoop up and jump up. We had to, knowing he was going to be here tonight, we did have to remove all the normal clocks, and we replaced them with digital clocks in case he forgets what time it is. But it really is. I have my little, it's not my little, I say that it is physically little, but it's not little metaphorically. I have my Vietnam veteran pin that I wear in my collar. I spent about 18 of the happiest months of my life in Vietnam when I was a young guy. And you know, it's funny, I of course didn't realize it at the time, but in hindsight, just like so many things in life that are seen in hindsight, it truly was probably some of the best months of my life. There's an old book that we probably all are familiar with, Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. You remember that one? Well, just about everything I needed to learn, I learned in the Navy. And I really mean that. I spent about 20 years going to different kinds of colleges and universities. I guess everybody goes through 12th grade, and then I had 4 more, and then 4 more on top of that. And I spent my whole life around colleges and universities, erudite people like Ron Lane, and yet, believe it or not, I think I probably learned more in the rivers of South Vietnam in about 11 months than I've learned in all the other years put together. I think I learned how to lead people. I learned how to hire people, learned how to fire people, which fortunately hasn't come in handy too often. But I learned most of the things. I was not a career officer, but I learned most of the things that made me successful in life when I was in the Navy. And the Navy gave me a chance to travel the world. The old saying goes, I joined the Navy to see the world, and what did I see? I saw the sea, but I actually did see the world. I saw everything from Southeast Asia to Greenland, and from the Gulf to, the Mediterranean beaches. It took me all around the world, and I've pursued that passion for my whole life because travel is something that is a part of me. I've always said when I grow up I want to be a travel agent, but so far my wife refuses to acknowledge that I've grown up. So I've got a few more years to go on that. But I love travel, and in the course of my travels, I have been to many, many places. I have been to the Eiffel Tower. I have been to the Way of the Cross. I mean, you name it, and I've been there. Been to all 50 states. That'll give you kind of an idea what kind of a nitwit I am when it comes to travel. But in all those travels, there are only 2 things I've ever seen that have left me speechless. And if you know me very well, that's pretty hard to do. And those 2 things, one is very personal. Those 2 things are the wall at the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., where I go to visit every time I go to. My brother lives in Washington, and I think he's getting tired of ferrying me down there to that wall. But I go every time I go to D.C., and the other thing, of course, is the cemetery at Normandy. And it is truly, if you've never been to Normandy and you got an IRA and you can take some money out of it, you really need to go. That's the one place you really need to go. You do not need to go to the Negev Desert, but you need to go to Normandy. And you need to stand before those crosses or those stars of David and look at the row after row after row of lives that really weren't lived, of lives that were sacrificed for a greater cause, of people who didn't get to be husbands, didn't get to be fathers, didn't get to be grandfathers, didn't get to be school principals, didn't get to be firemen. They just got to be corpses, and they lie there in France. Reminding us, of course, as it always does, that the price of freedom is a high price to pay. And there are some who have paid it with what just about everybody's favorite president would call their last full measure of devotion. And one of the things that you get from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which, by the way, was delivered in a cemetery, and Arlington Cemetery, by the way, was put where it sits, because it was owned by the Lees, and the garrison commander in Washington wanted them to be able to see what their decision had wrought. So it was a political decision even then as to where it would go. But these graveyards that stand not only as very sad places and very emotional places, but very poignant places, places that make you in a curious way kind of proud of what you see. I've spent enough time at the wall in Vietnam to know that it makes me madder than it makes me proud, but it's a legitimate emotion, and I guess we all have those. The other thing I would tell you about service, and I know so many hands went up, it's a bond that lasts forever. I spent this afternoon working on hotel reservations for my group. There were 9 of us who landed in Vietnam in the summer of 1969, and we were about to have our 54th reunion. And the insults will start to fly the minute we get off the plane, just like they were flying when we left. And it all comes back in a rush. And that's when you look back on it and you say that, curiously, it was maybe the best 18 months of my life. And I think of that often. But tonight we have a really special treat, because if as Abraham Lincoln said, military cemeteries are hallowed ground. If they are indeed hallowed ground, there is no more hallowed ground than Arlington National Cemetery, where most of our heroes lie. And there is in Arlington National Cemetery no more hallowed place than the tomb of the unknown soldier. And so Sandhills and all of us who are not veterans and those of us who are veterans are really, really pleased and honored tonight to welcome Colonel John Rutgers. I'm not sure if he was named after the university or if the university was named after him. If the university was named after him, I'd like to see him about adding his name to that wall in the lobby. But Colonel Rutgers is going to talk to us. He himself was a guard. And I hope he shares that with you. He spent a tour of 2 years. And, when he came out, how do you think I knew he was a guard? His posture, yes. But he could have been a Marine. His shoes. Do you ever stand guard duty? Those shoes, man. And these guys have got the greatest shoes on the planet. So with his shoes in his hand and with his stories and his information about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Colonel John Rutgers.
Thank you, sir, for the kind words. Same family. They don't give me any money. Well, thank you. It's an honor for me to be here tonight with Sandhills Community College and the Bradshaw Performing Arts Center. This is an important time to support artistic expression and educational development, so thank you for all you do. I am here tonight to talk to you about an experience of what is simultaneously a monument, an institution, and a conceptual recognition of those who have made the supreme sacrifice of their life and identity in service to their country. I was fortunate to serve for 2.5 years as a Sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It shaped my Army career and deeply impacted my life. Tonight I'll talk about some of the history behind the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the training and life of Sentinels, and what this has all meant to me. The tomb was born out of the United States experience in World War I. From 1917 to 1918, 117,000 military dead was experienced by the United States. And that had a huge impact on the public. Congress passed a resolution providing for the burial of one unknown soldier from World War I in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. This was passed into law by President Woodrow Wilson at the time. Arlington Cemetery itself, a long fixture in American history, had been going through developments as well. The Memorial Amphitheater had been started into construction in 1915. Here you can see the completed building, but the incomplete nature of the grounds in 1919. And by the time of the World War I Internment in 1921, this is what the finished grounds look like as they do today. The World War I Internment took place on 11 November 1921. Started out, the unknown soldier was buried in a single crypt. Out of necessity, by 1923, civilian guards were posted to protect the monument, and by 1926, the military had taken over the guard role of the tomb. The single crypt itself was replaced in 1932 by the more elaborate sarcophagus that is the appearance of the tomb that we know today. Of course, the war to end all wars was not the U.S. last conflict, so this subsequently was followed by the World War II and Korea War double internment in 1958. And all too soon after that, the Vietnam War internment in 1984. Just 10 short years later, in 1994, the Vietnam War unknowns remains were identified as First Lieutenant Michael Blassie of the United States Air Force, shot down in An Loc, Vietnam in 1972. He was disinterred in 1998 and reburied closer to his family's home. I have been asked in the past what I thought about that change in the history of the tomb, and I personally am glad for it. For a place whose purpose is to honor those who are missing and unidentified, I couldn't think of a better outcome than at least one family achieving a measure of closure about the results of their loved one's life. So it only magnifies the importance of the place for me. By the way, there is still no shortage of missing or unidentified U.S. personnel from the Vietnam conflict. Becoming a Sentinel is an arduous and lengthy process. It starts out with a soldier volunteering for duty with the Tomb Guard platoon. If they're accepted onto that duty, they start out in a temporary duty period in which they learn, they're in their Class B uniform the entire time. They learn the basic manual of arms with the rifle. They learn how to get their uniform up to Sentinel standard. And they learn a basic packet of knowledge about the cemetery that they memorize word for word and have to be able to recite at the end of this. If they pass all these requirements at the 3 weeks, at the 3-week mark, they're brought into what's called spot rotation. This is where they start learning the specifics of performing the guard duty outside in the public eye. Finally, as their skills develop and improve, they're pulled up to what's called full rotation. They're basically a full walking sentinel. We're still making little corrections here and there, and they're polishing up the last of their knowledge. And when they're deemed ready, at the end of that, they go through a process called running for their papers. This is where the prospective sentinel will move throughout the cemetery to various historic points, proving their knowledge of the history of the cemetery, at the end of which they will get their final exam, their papers, which is a 120-question test of all their knowledge of Arlington National Cemetery at the tomb. If they pass that, they're awarded their Tomb Guard identification badge. There are a ton of rules when you are a non-badge holder, new personnel at the tomb. You cannot speak unless spoken to. You do not acknowledge badge holder conversations. You do not acknowledge TV or the radio. You cannot sit down anywhere except the kitchen. You spend your entire time in the quarters studying, getting your uniform back up to standard, and practicing in the mirrors throughout the quarters your manual of arms and perfecting your outside performance. This is not hazing. I was never hazed while I was there. But at the end of this process, which on average can take about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, we've produced a person that can go outside in the public eye and maintain their composure no matter what. And that's the end result of our training process. That's what you can see in some of these images up here. You see new personnel in the mirrors that are found throughout the quarters located under the tomb, practicing the manual of arms, working on those basic techniques. And these are obviously TDY personnel. They're still in their Class B uniforms the whole time. We would take simple military equipment, such as a bayonet scabbard, and shine, paint, and polish it until it turned into the ceremonial version you see there on the right. In this image, you can see the ready racks, where all the elements of a sentinel's uniform are kept exactly in the same order, ready to go for the next guard duty period, or what's called a walk up on the mat. It is a tomb guard platoon, so there are 3 squads, and in guard duty language, a squad is called a relief. So there's 3 reliefs, and we work in what is called a Kelly rotation. So we work a day, we're off a day, work a day, off a day, work a day, 4 days off. And it sounds like a lot of time off, but it's not. Those duty days average about 30 hours long for new personnel. The in-between days are spent almost entirely sleeping and getting your uniform back up to standard. And those 4 days off at the end, 1 to 2 of those are spent getting your uniform back up to standard, sleeping, and doing some training before the cycle starts all over again. And at the end of all this, you're awarded your Tomb Guard identification badge. This, in the image at the top right, it's a combination of the wreaths that are depicted on the sides of the tomb, as well as the face of the tomb that faces the Potomac River, which depicts peace, victory, and valor. In the image on the left, you can see the badge board, which is as it currently looks. This is the record of all the people that we know of in history that have guarded the tomb and that we have their name on file. This is a closer up look at that board. This is the part I'm on. So it's got my little plate with my name, my number, and the dates of service for me. You'll also notice up here that it's got a badge number and the word revoked. And that's because the tomb as an institution follows the career of the sentinel throughout their entire military career. If the individual is deemed to have done something unbecoming of a sentinel, their permanent orders for their Tomb Guard identification badge are revoked and their name is removed from the board. That is how serious we take this, and people do keep track. I have known a few people that this has happened to. In my experience, it was always warranted. So life at the tomb after you earn your badge doesn't get much easier. Your time is spent maintaining the standard. It is spent performing your guard duties, the tour out on the mat we call a walk, and it's spent doing ceremonies at the tomb. In these images, you can see the black rubber mat that the Sentinel moves back and forth on 21 paces. We call it the mat. That guard rotation would be called a walk. In summers, it's a half an hour long. In wintertime, it's an hour long. You do as many of those a day based upon how many people are on your relief. If I've been on a relief as healthy as 11 people, so it's a pretty easy day. I've been on a relief as small as 3 people, and that's a very long, long, long day. You can also see the small shelter at the far end of the plaza. That is where it's called the box. That's where the Sentinel will remain while ceremonies are taking place. There's also a means to communicate there should there be a situation on the plaza that requires the attention of the other folks down in the quarters. Throughout all this time, the Sentinel, the personnel that work at the tomb are all expected to live by the Sentinel's creed, which states, "My dedication to this sacred duty is total and wholehearted, and the responsibility bestowed on me never will I falter, and with dignity and perseverance, my standard will remain perfection. Through the years of diligence and praise and the discomfort of the elements, I will walk my tour in humble reverence to the best of my ability. It is he who commands the respect I protect, his bravery that made us so proud, surrounded by well-meaning crowds by day, alone in the thoughtful peace of night. The soldier will, in honor, glory, rest under my eternal vigilance." The tomb's also about change. In 1996, Sergeant Heather Johnson became the first female Sentinel. I had the privilege to go back and meet her during this time. What a phenomenal soldier, and absolutely the example of the kind of service person that we want in a highly visible, no-fail environment like this. And just as recently as 2 months ago, in the end of September, we had our first all-female guard change in history. So I'm very proud of being part of an organization that can change and grow while still maintaining the highest standards and the dignity and incredible responsibility that this role requires. In the background of all this is the Army Ceremonial Unit, the 3rd Infantry Regiment of the Old Guard. The Old Guard has both ceremonial and real-world duties. This is the oldest active duty serving unit in the Army, founded in 1784. And you can see in the image in the top center, this was the Old Guard's first deployment to a real-world mission in Djibouti, Africa, since the Vietnam War. So we have gone back to having 2 battalions, one of which that covers all the ceremonial roles, and one of which does all the real-world missions, which I thought was a great development. So what does this place mean to me? This was a time in my life when I got to meet my heroes in the business of being a professional soldier. You see in the top left image, that's Vietnam War Medal of Honor Special Forces Medal of Honor recipient Roger Donlin. Came down to visit us. We would often have people come down to visit us. In this picture, you see myself with General James Mukiyama and Colonel David Hackworth. If you don't know, Colonel Hackworth was one of the most decorated American soldiers in U.S. Army history. It was also a place of growing up under phenomenal non-commissioned officers and their leadership. My relief commander was Dexter Rayner, amazing man. Sergeant Major Bart Womack had a key role in my future as an Army Ranger, as did Rolf Christensen. I would also encounter Sentinels throughout the rest of my career that were still maintaining the standard, out there in different roles, and still a part of that community. Colonel Larry Redmond being very notable amongst them. What also meant to me was a time and space to grow up as a young person. This was, think about it, the kids that do this mission, they're 18, 19, 20, 21. So the fact that they have this level of responsibility at the rank and the age they are is incredible. And it says something about our training process and why all of us believe in it, because we can take the silly lot of us that were my buddies at the time and turn us into a force for good and positive representation of people who have made the ultimate sacrifice. This is a picture of me up here receiving my Expert Infantryman badge from Colonel Hunt, our regimental commander at the time. I appear to be 12 in the photograph. And this is my Special Forces detachment many years later, burying one of our brothers in Arlington National Cemetery. So it's a place that has stayed with me throughout my career and definitely in my heart. Oh, this is at my time, this is what the badge board looked like. It was much smaller and it ended about there. Right now, I think there are 692 badge holders in history. The most important thing about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is not about me. It is about remembering those people who have made so much of a sacrifice that they have lost their life and their identity in that process. And I think for me, the moment that really captured that was I was outside critiquing one of my Sentinels that was on their guard tour. And we always critique each other because we're always charged with maintaining the standard. You can't do that by yourself. Somebody else has to look at you. And an older woman and a young boy approached me outside. And she said, "Excuse me, young man, are you one of the soldiers that works here?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." It was pretty obvious. And I'm thinking this is a grandmother and grandson, maybe. And she said, "Well, I just wanted to thank you. I lost my husband at Guadalcanal, and he was never recovered. And so I've always liked to think of him as being here, where I can come visit him. So thank you for what you do." To this day, I still get choked up when I think about that moment, and it reminds me how small I am in the scheme of things and how important this place is to so many people and what I have to live up to. So, I could talk about this subject for hours. I am happy to answer any questions you have. On behalf of the Society of the Honor Guard, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it. It's a good story to tell, and I'm happy to take any questions you have. Thank you. Yes, sir. Are we doing the mic thing? I can do the...
Yeah, oh yeah.
I can do the...
Don't need it for me. Two questions to start off with. One is you were retired as a colonel, but clearly you were an enlisted man when you did this tour.
Yes, sir. I did 9 years as an enlisted person, and I did the rest as an officer.
Okay, so there are enlisted men who are doing, or men and women, who are the Sentinels.
Yeah.
But is there a command structure? Do you go back maybe years later as a captain in charge of the platoon or something like that?
You could. So it changes back and forth in time. And this is one of the things, when you have a history like this, you can look at the organization over time and see the sine wave of change. And if you're familiar enough with the organization, you see the little things that went back and forth that people thought were important at that moment. In the past, officers had been assigned as a tomb platoon leader. Usually it's the XO, the executive officer for the Echo Company of the Old Guard. But in my time, there were no officers that served in that capacity, and largely because there wasn't a ceremonial role to put them into at the tomb itself. So that was, for a time period there, that was difficult. But now I believe it's back to where an officer can serve in a capacity at the tomb as the platoon leader. Yeah.
The next question I have is the remains of how many service personnel are contained in the tomb? Is it just that First World War person? Is it one for each of the wars? I've always wondered.
Yeah. So in the World War I crypt, that was one set of unknown remains. There were 4 coffins assembled, each containing separate remains as well as could be discerned. And Sergeant Edward F. Younger, who was a highly decorated soldier in World War I, circled the caskets 3 times and placed a spray of white roses on the 3rd casket for the left. And that was how they selected what remains would become the unknown soldier. For the World War II and Korea War internment, same thing, 1 set of remains as best as can be understood. And for Vietnam, it was 1 set of remains. And not many. People don't think about what that looks like at the business end of figuring this out. But in Arlington itself, there's the Tomb of the Civil War Unknowns, in which thousands of remains are buried, remains being a part of a human that they couldn't identify. So it's a great question. Yes, sir. Sorry, the lights are. No, sir. And now there is a simple crypt that looks like the other 2 crypts side by the World War II and the Korea War crypt. It looks the same in size and dimension, but it has a simple description in honor of all those missing and unknown from the Vietnam War. Another great question. No, they've not gone down that road, and hopefully the Vietnam War will be the last conflict in which we have a situation where we have unidentified remains that we don't know who they are. Now every soldier is DNA'd, checked, so it would be very difficult now for us to have an unknown from future conflicts, although we will have missing and unidentified people from future conflicts. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Would you mind explaining what transpires during the actual change of the cards and the significance of the 21 steps?
Absolutely. As I put this together, I thought, man, there's so much stuff I left out. And you try to pack all this in a 20-minute bag, and it's a challenge. So the 21 paces in front of the tomb is based actually on naval history and the idea of the 21-gun salute, in which a ship, when it would move into a new city's harbor, would fire all of its guns at once and salute. In the case of the time, this part gets murky in the history. Arguably, there was 21 guns on a certain type of ship. I've read other things that said it was 24 guns. But as these naval vessels would approach a city, they'd fire all their guns to let people know they were coming, they were going to the market, they were there to trade supplies and whatnot. So it harkens back to that tradition of it's a salute to the people that they're going to visit. And so everything has been modeled kind of around that 21 number. 21 paces the Sentinel makes on the mat, back and forth in front of the tomb with the rifle always on the shoulder facing the crowd. There's chains across the other side that prevent people from coming up the stairs to the tomb. So that's why the rifle will always be on one shoulder. Before the guard, you can tell you've been, I had 650 some walks, so we develop a natural sense of timing of these things just out of sheer repetition. So when the end of your time is coming on the mat, usually a half an hour in the hottest day of the summer, you know when it's getting close. And you can hear that the sergeant or the soldier that's going to come relieve the guard, you can hear them walking out. You hear the footsteps coming. So wherever you're at on the mat, you can get to the other end, turn and face, and get in position and step off together in cadence together. And so it's all based on sound and feeling at that point, which is why we spend so much time in training. And you never escape training while you're there. There's never a place where you're done, because you'll get assigned to a new group of people that hear and feel things and were trained different than you. So you got to get in with them, work with them a little bit at the start of a session if it's a new group, and in time you'll develop a sense where all those motions happen at the same time. The sergeant or the person changing the guard will come out. They will announce the guard change. The two will step off together, and the person changing the guard will go inspect the oncoming sentinel, which I used to could do really well. I can't do anymore. But does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, I know there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
What transpires there. New requirements as far as height, weight, waist size.
So of those 3 reliefs, we were organized by height. And when I got there, I was on first relief, the tall relief, because I'm 6'2". And by the time I left, I was on third relief, because I was no longer amongst the tall people. All our monsters on first relief, they were like guys that were 6'5". We're having to get custom blues made for them because they're just giant people. It's like, this is ridiculous. My roommate in the old guard, this guy here, was 6'6". So we actually all got pulled out. All 3 of us got pulled out of a cohort going to the Big Red One at Fort Benning. Well, we were at Fort Benning in infantry training, getting ready to go to the 1st Infantry Division in Kansas. And the 3 of us got pulled out of the lineup and got told, hey, you 3 have the right height, build, the right background, meaning we hadn't gotten in trouble, and the right test scores to be a part of a special unit. Would you be interested? And, of course, we all inevitably said yes. So yeah, we are organized by height. It's not as strict as you might think. Steve Shodine I worked with was about 5'8". I think he was about the shortest sentinel I knew. And you couldn't tell it. He's a mountain of a man, so. And this is Tony's last walk. This is a big deal. When you come to the end of your time at the tomb, you're posted a last time, and at the end of your walk, you come back up and you put a single red rose on each of the crypts, and that's the last time you'll ever go on Plaza again. And guys usually come back downstairs and cry. So, and I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, I think I did. I certainly felt like it. Yes, sir.
Yes. What determines the amount of time that a sentinel is with the old guard?
Within the needs of the Army is the first answer. A normal tour, I think, of duty there would be about 3 years. In my time period, it was 3 or 4 years. And the reality at the time was unit manning for the Army. If they had somebody that could meet qualifications, they tended to keep you if you wanted to stay. Serving at the tomb itself, the norm was about 1.5 years. I did 2.5. I knew a couple of people that did 3. Not too many people go much farther than that because your body at some point doesn't put up with the stresses of doing that. For example, when I left, I had a very hard time standing still. I would waver a little bit, and you could feel it. And you know your time is coming into an end for that job where you've got to be stock still in front of people. So yeah, you kind of, so it's a 2 answer. It's when the Army thinks you need to go, but also when you know you need to go because you can't quite keep up with the physical, particular physical condition of this, which takes its toll in time. So at about, I haven't known anybody who got past 3 years. I left just because I wanted to go be an airborne ranger. Anyone else? Oh, yes, ma'am. This does happen. In correct language, the sentinel will challenge the individual to not cross the chains or to stop doing whatever infraction they're doing, like smoking or being loud or talking during a ceremony. In our own language inside the quarters, we call it a burn, in which we will challenge the individual. Usually on a case-by-case basis, we'll exercise some judgment. If it's an adult, they're done, and we're going to make them feel bad as best we can. If it's a child, I had one circumstance where inevitably it's a little kid, it's a toddler, and they'll like slip away from mom, and they'll get out inside the chains, and at that point, you very calmly, shoulder your rifle at a carry. We would walk over to the child, put out our hand, and they'd hopefully grab ours because they'd be interested in us. And we're approaching them very slowly and quietly, and still in the kind of the same robotic manner, if you will. We should be smooth, not machine-like, by the way. And we would walk the child back to the offending parent, go back to the mat, to where we were, come back to the ready, and then burn the heck out of the parents. But yes, that's the correct answer. I had all sorts of things. I've had tourists try to come up the front steps. There was a group of about 30 of them, and it was obvious they didn't speak English, they weren't from the United States, and they all came around the corner, and they're kind of like, hey, is this cool? And it was like, stopped, looked at him, like, no, this is not cool. I can't say that, but it was pretty apparent, not a good idea. Then and the two guys in front, I could see them look at each other like, and they kept going. It was like, oh, it's on. We were going to tell you then. 99% of the time, 99.99% of the time, people will wake up and do the right thing. There are people that won't. That was always true. The Sentinel will physically interject between the tomb and a person. I've never seen that go to the reality of a courtroom, so I don't know what the outcome is there. If you don't know it, at nighttime, the tomb is not a ceremonial guard post. It's a real guard post. The wall of Arlington National Cemetery is 3 feet high, and we get all kinds of exciting people that come through the cemetery at night, so it needs to be a real guard post. And you name it, we've had it. But yeah, it's a real guard post, and the guard will, at that point, it's not a show. And I've only known situations at nighttime that went to that level of involvement.
Taking your kids or grandkids? No, one more from me.
Oh.
Taking your kids or grandkids there?
My daughter has had my military life inflicted upon her for her 20 plus years. She's now a bank examiner with the Department of the Treasury and has very little interest in what she describes as drunken rangers and SF guys. So, but yes, she's been, and at one point I think she was actually sort of impressed. She was told one time, like, man, your old man's awesome. Don't you think that's cool? She's like, why? Like, okay, yeah. I think she appreciates me later in life. Yes, sir.
During the Vietnam War, when there was protesting going on, were there any verbal abuse to the Sentinels from some of these protesters that had to get in the way?
I have never heard anyone tell a story like that. And I know a few of the Vietnam era Sentinels. I have never heard anyone, in fact, we're getting together next weekend. It's the 100-year anniversary of the society. And so we'll all get together in DC and get dressed up and have dinner and drinks together. I have never heard of the Vietnam era guys talk about anything like that. The public, okay, this is some inside baseball. The public will get on your nerves sometimes. And it is usually two things. It was an adult being callous and just ridiculous. People doing things like tying their shoelace on a tombstone. Just things like that, where you're just like, I can't strangle you, but I will speak to you. And the other thing was sometimes the busloads of kids, which we absolutely want the busloads of kids to go there and see this and understand it. But some of those groups would just be turned loose like it's Disneyland. And the kids, without this being put into context for them, don't know the difference. And so that would be frustrating to see too, if they would just turn a busload of kids loose in the cemetery. That would be very frustrating as well. But you talk to folks and try to, that's part of the reason why we have the Sentinels learn so much knowledge about the cemetery, is because we're expected to be ambassadors and tour guides if somebody catches us not on the mat doing our duty, which happens quite frequently. Yes? Your question was, what would happen that would cause your status with the tomb to be revoked? Oh, an example. Okay, now I got it now. Yeah, one was a case of an individual serving in the unit that in a situation used inappropriate language with the fellow folks there. In this case, racial language. Nope, not going to be tolerated or even. And it was pretty obvious. It was in front of a large group of people, so it wasn't a difficult decision. And the unfortunate thing is that I don't think this person is particularly racist. I think that's the language they grew up using, and there were enough people around that took it not in the context that weren't his buddies. So that's one example. You can remember some high-profile examples of drill sergeants incorrectly conducting themselves with trainees. That would be another example, where they're no longer in the unit, but yeah, when it gets back to us, bye. Yep. Yes, sir.
As you described in your job there as an ambassador or a tour guide, largely ceremonial,
Yep.
is it unusual to go from a unit like that to a Ranger Special Forces? Or is it the discipline involved in the tomb unit transfer over to a job like that?
I think you're spot on there at the end. The discipline transferred over. I had never seen a night vision device when I showed up at 2nd Ranger Battalion. My rifle had been ceremonial. I had fired an M16 twice a year, normal military qualification. Yeah, I did. Yep. I started out as a combat engineer, did the reserves for 2.5 years, trying to make everybody happy, going to Army ROTC, being in the reserves, picking up trash the whole time as a combat engineer. And as soon as the Gulf War kicked off in 1990, you can hear bombs falling on the radio, and I am in the recruiter's office saying, "You'll take me now, won't you?" And yep, sure enough, I got myself to Fort Benning in an infantry slot. And that's when we got sucked into the old guard, which turned out to be a great experience. And I, about 1.5 years in, started turning in requests to go to the Ranger Regiment. And finally, 2.5 years into it, the poor pack clerk sergeant drugged me and my buddy in, Victor Satterlin, and he said, "All right, you idiots, we've turned down 5 of these things and you won't go away. What do you want to do? You want to go to Ranger School or you want to go to the Ranger Regiment?" And so my buddy went to school, Victor Satterlin, who went on to become the operations officer, and I believe he's a tactical battalion commander now in the Ranger Regiment. And I went straight to the Rangers and did my 4 years there and went to OCS after that. But the discipline, the attention to detail, the professionalism I learned there, yeah, it was easy. You go from one discipline to another and you don't notice a difference. It's hard if you come from the outside. If you're brought up that way, it's invisible to you almost. You still get your attention on a Monday morning, but yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Since you retired from the military, do you have another career now?
I work in the civilian security industry for a company called Raven Advisory there in Fayetteville. And we do various global and national jobs and various security-related tasks. A lot of military training. I'm the security portion of the company, so I do executive protection, media security, things like that. Yep.
Well, you got another career as a speaker. I think it's great.
Thank you. And thank you so much again for having us. The Society of the Honor Guard greatly appreciates the time to tell the story. We thank you for your time and attention. Please come out to Arlington National Cemetery and watch a guard change. Thank you.